In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.
The Imperium's vast bureaucracy maintained lists of threats so extensive that entire cathedral worlds existed solely to archive them. But on the night that reality tore open above Hive world Persephone 1000, something arrived that had no name in Imperial records, no classification in inquisitorial databases, no precedent in all the blood-soaked history of mankind's endless war for survival. Site-01 had existed for 3 centuries in another reality entirely. A sprawling underground complex on a world where humanity still believed in rationality, where the scientific method held dominion over superstition, where the impossible could be contained behind concrete and steel. The SCP Foundation had secured, contained, and protected humanity from anomalies that defied natural law. Entities that killed with a glance, objects that rewrote causality, creatures that existed in defiance of physics itself. Then came Incident XK-001 Dimensional, and everything the Foundation thought they understood became obsolete. Dr. Elizabeth Vance had been reviewing containment logs for SCP-682 when the alarms began. Not the standard breach alarms. She knew those intimately, had heard them dozens of times in her 15-year career. These were different. Reality alarms, the kind that meant the universe itself was coming apart. Containment breach across all sectors. The intercom crackled with the voice of Site Director Morrison. His legendary calm fractured at the edges. Dimensional stability at 0. All personnel initiate emergency The walls screamed. That was the only way Elizabeth could describe it later, when she still had the luxury of later. Reinforced concrete and steel began to warp, stretching like putty as colors that had no place in human perception bled through the cracks. She felt the floor drop away, but she wasn't falling. Reality was falling, and she was simply along for the ride. The transition lasted an eternity compressed into a single agonizing second. Elizabeth experienced sensations that human neurology wasn't designed to process. The taste of starlight, the sound of emptiness screaming, the touch of something vast and malevolent brushing against her consciousness like a predator investigating prey. Then silence. Cold. The emergency lighting flickered back to life, bathing everything in crimson. Elizabeth hauled herself upright, checking her tablet out of pure professional instinct. The screen glowed, but the data made no sense. GPS, error. Network connection, error. Date, error. External atmospheric readings, atmosphere, present, but composition unknown. Site-wide alert, she gasped into her radio. This is Dr. Vance, biological containment. Someone give me a status report. Static answered her for 5 long seconds. Then Morrison's voice returned, strained but functional. All personnel, this is Site Director Morrison. We have experienced a catastrophic dimensional displacement event. Current location unknown. Structural integrity holding at 70%. Containment status. A pause that spoke volumes. Multiple breaches confirmed. SCP-682 containment compromised. SCP-106 dimensional cell destabilized. SCP-173 vault integrity uncertain. All personnel are to implement emergency recontainment protocols immediately. Elizabeth's blood turned to ice. 3 of the most dangerous entities in Foundation custody, loose in an unknown location. She pulled up the facility map on her tablet. Most sectors still showed green, but the heavy containment wing glowed angry red. She needed to move. But first, she needed to know where they were. The exterior observation room was 3 levels up. Elizabeth took the stairs 2 at a time, passing panicked researchers and security personnel, mobilizing with the practiced efficiency of people who drilled for the apocalypse weekly. When she reached the observation deck, she pressed her face against the reinforced glass and felt her understanding of reality shift once more. They weren't underground anymore. Site-01 now rested on the surface of a world that looked like hell had taken up urban planning. Massive spires of corroded metal stretched toward a sky choked with industrial smog. Cities, if they could be called that, sprawled across the landscape in haphazard clusters of Gothic architecture that seemed to defy structural engineering. And everywhere, were people. Billions of them, packed into structures that rose kilometers into the polluted atmosphere. "My God," whispered Dr. Chen, the astrophysicist who'd arrived beside her. "Where are we?" "I don't know," Elizabeth replied. "But we need to..." The sky tore open. A rift of purple and pink energy erupted above the largest spire cluster, and through it poured things. Winged creatures that seemed to shift between forms, their bodies composed of impossible geometries and colors that hurt to perceive. They descended on the city like locusts, and even from this distance, Elizabeth could hear the screaming. "Those aren't any anomaly in our database," Chen said, his voice hollow. Before Elizabeth could respond, new contacts appeared on the horizon. Ships, massive, cathedral-like vessels that moved with ponderous grace through the atmosphere. They opened fire on the entities pouring from the rift, and the sky blazed with weapons that seemed to tear reality itself. "We're in the middle of a war zone," Elizabeth said. She turned from the window, her mind already racing through protocols. "And we've just brought the most dangerous collection of anomalies in human history into an active combat zone. Chen, get to communications. Try to establish contact with whoever's out there. Tell them we're not hostile, we're not part of whatever's happening, and for the love of everything, tell them we need help containing multiple reality-threatening entities before..." An explosion rocked the facility. Deep, from below, Elizabeth's tablet shrieked an alert she'd hoped never to see. SCP-682 containment cell breached. Entity status, hostile. Location, moving toward exterior breach. "Oh no," she whispered. "It's going outside." In the depths of Site-01, something that couldn't be killed, that adapted to everything the Foundation threw at it, that hated humanity with a passion that transcended reason. That thing had just found a door to a new world filled with billions of humans. And 16 levels up, in heavy containment. Something that only moved when you weren't looking at it had just heard the lights flicker. The 41st millennium was about to learn that humanity's monsters came in more varieties than the Imperium had ever imagined. If you crave stories where scientific horror meets grimdark futures, where rational minds face irrational universes, smash that subscribe button. Because the Foundation's mission never ends, even when reality itself becomes the anomaly. The Emperor protects. But who protects against things the Emperor never imagined? The Imperial Navy cruiser. Undying Vigilance had been on patrol for 73 days when its auger arrays detected the anomaly. Captain Matthias Korev, a veteran of 40 years' service to the God Emperor, had seen many strange things in the void. Warp storms, space hulks, Xenos vessels that defied conventional physics. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for what appeared on his ship's monitors. "Captain," Sensor Adept Yavesh reported, his augmetic eye whirring as it processed data. "We're detecting a massive structure that has appeared in the Underhive sector of Persephone Luftwinth. No warp signature, no engine emissions. It simply manifested." Korev leaned forward in his command throne, studying the grainy picked feed. The structure was enormous, easily 5 kilometers across, and appeared to be constructed from materials that didn't match any Imperial architecture. Clean lines, functional design, no aquilas, no Gothic embellishments, no holy inscriptions. It looked almost secular. "Scan for life signs," Korev ordered. "Reading approximately 8,000 human signatures, sir, all within the structure." "But Captain," Yavesh's voice faltered. "I'm also detecting readings that don't match any known biological or mechanical signatures. 27 distinct anomalous contacts, each radiating energy patterns that the machine spirit cannot classify. 27. That number alone warranted immediate inquisitorial notification. Vox operator, broadcast standard Imperial hailing frequencies. Let's determine if these people are loyal citizens of the Imperium or something else." Korev's hand moved to the activation rune for the ship's weapons. "And ready lance batteries. If they're heretics or Xenos, I want the Emperor's judgment ready to fall." The Vox operator worked his controls, broadcasting in High Gothic. "Unknown vessel. You have manifested within Imperial space without authorization. Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed as enemies of the God Emperor of mankind." For 30 seconds, only static answered. Then a voice responded. Clear, female. Speaking accented Low Gothic with terms Korev didn't recognize. "This is Site Director Catherine Morrison of the SCP Foundation, Site 01. We are not hostile. Repeat, we are not hostile. We've experienced a catastrophic dimensional displacement and require immediate assistance. We are currently dealing with multiple containment breaches of extreme threat entities. If you have military resources, we need them now. People are dying down here." Korev exchanged glances with his first officer, Commander Wex. Dimensional displacement? Containment breaches? The terminology was unfamiliar, but the desperation in the woman's voice was genuine. "Site Director Morrison," Korev responded carefully. "This world falls under the protection of the immortal God Emperor of mankind. What is the nature of your containment breaches?" A pause. Then, "We don't have time for full explanations. We have multiple entities loose in our facility that pose existential threats to human life. One of them is currently breaking through our perimeter toward your civilian population. It's designated SCP-682, a large reptilian entity with extreme adaptive capabilities and complete immunity to conventional weaponry. It cannot be killed, only contained, and it hates all living things with homicidal intensity." Korev's blood chilled. An unkillable Xenos creature loose in the Underhive. That alone would kill thousands before it could be stopped. How large is this creature? Last measurement before breach, 7 meters long, 4 tons. But it adapts. If you shoot it, it will develop resistance. If you burn it, it will develop thermal protection. It learns, it evolves, and it never stops. Heresy, Commander Wex breathed. An abomination against the natural order. Maybe. Morrison's voice crackled back. Had she heard him? "But it's your problem now if we can't re-establish containment. I'm transmitting coordinates. We need heavy weapons, temporal stasis equipment if you have it, and personnel willing to help us repair our containment systems. In exchange, we can provide information about the other entities we're securing. Trust me, Captain, you want them secured." Korev made his decision with the speed of a man who'd commanded in crisis for decades. "Stand by, Site Director. I'm dispatching 3 Valkyrie gunships with Astra Militarum support. They will assess the situation and provide fire support. But know this, if you or your people show any sign of heresy, chaos taint, or hostility to the Imperium, I will lance your entire facility from orbit. Am I understood?" Perfectly, Morrison replied. Just hurry. The Valkyries screamed through Persephone Theme's toxic atmosphere, carrying 3 squads of Cadian shock troops, veterans who'd seen combat against heretics, traitors, and Xenos across a dozen worlds. Sergeant Halen Grimm had fought orcs, cultists, and once even held a line against a Chaos Space Marine warband. He was not a man given to fear. But as his Valkyrie descended toward the impossible structure jutting from the Underhive, he felt something cold settle in his gut. Eyes on target, the pilot voxed. That building shouldn't exist. Augurs say it's constructed from materials we can't identify. And Sergeant, we're reading weapons fire inside. Big caliber stuff. Grimm checked his lasgun one more time, a ritual that had kept him alive through 15 years of war. Casualties? Can't tell. But whatever's shooting isn't using Imperial weapons. Different energy signatures. And something's moving through the lower levels. Big, fast, angry. The Valkyrie touched down on a landing platform that shouldn't have supported its weight. The structure was that foreign. Grimm led his squad out, lasguns raised, into a scene of controlled chaos. Men and women in strange uniforms, clean, functional, without any Imperial insignia, rushed through corridors carrying equipment that hummed with unfamiliar technology. They moved with military precision, but their weapons were wrong. Sleek, modern. And the way they coordinated spoke of training that rivaled even guard standards. A woman approached, her uniform marked with insignia that read, Site Director Morrison. She was perhaps 40, with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. Sergeant Grimm? She asked, somehow knowing his name. His Valkyrie must have transmitted their identities. Thank whoever's listening that you're here. We've got SCP-682 in Sector 7 tearing through structural supports. It's already killed 17 of our security personnel and absorbed enough damage to develop partial thermal shielding. We need to herd it back to its containment cell before it reaches the surface. Grimm processed this with soldier's efficiency. Show me. Morrison led them through corridors that belonged in a tech priest's fever dream. Clean, sterile, lit by lights that never flickered. No candles, no incense, no prayers inscribed on the walls. Just cold functionality. They reached an observation window overlooking a massive chamber. And there, tearing through a reinforced door like it was parchment, was the creature. SCP-682 was reptilian, yes. But that description failed to capture its wrongness. Its hide was scarred and burned, regenerating even as Grimm watched. Its eyes blazed with an intelligence that was distinctly malevolent. And its jaws were currently crushing a man in Foundation security armor like he was made of tin. Emperor's mercy, Grimm whispered. We don't have anything like that here, Morrison said flatly. What we have are weapons that can slow it down long enough to get it back in containment. Sergeant, I need your men to provide suppressing fire while my team sets up the acid bath recontainment protocol. Can you do that? Grimm looked at his men, saw their fear, saw them master it, as Cadians always did. We hold the line, Director. It's what we do. Good. Morrison keyed her radio. All teams, we have Imperial support. Execute Protocol 682 Gamma. Cadian troops will provide covering fire. Let's show this thing that it's not the scariest monster in the galaxy anymore. As alarms blared and Foundation personnel mobilized with the precision of a people who'd done this dozens of times before, Sergeant Grimm realized something profound. These people weren't heretics or Xenos. They were professionals facing horrors that made orcs look simple. And somewhere in the facility, something scraped against stone. Something that only moved when you looked away. Something that had found a maintenance corridor leading toward the surface. The Imperium's first contact with the SCP Foundation was about to become very, very complicated. SCP-682 crashed through another bulkhead with a roar that sounded less like an animal and more like the scream of tectonic plates grinding together. The creature had grown. Sergeant Grimm noticed it immediately. What had been 7 meters was now pushing 9, its mass swelling as it absorbed the damage being inflicted upon it. "First rank, fire!" Grimm bellowed. 20 lace guns opened up in perfect synchronization, ruby beams lancing across the containment chamber. They struck 682's hide with crackling energy, burning through scale and flesh. The creature staggered, shrieked, and kept coming. "It's adapting," shouted Dr. Vance from her position behind a blast shield. "The thermal damage is already showing 40% reduced effectiveness. We need to switch damage types." Grimm had no idea what that meant in practical terms, but he knew how to fight. "Second rank, frag grenades, concussive damage pattern." The Cadians responded with a discipline that made them legends. Grenades sailed through the air, detonating against 682's body in sequential blasts. The creature stumbled, ichor spraying from wounds that closed even as Grimm watched. Foundation security personnel moved with practiced efficiency, dragging massive hoses into position. Whatever they contained, it wasn't water. The substance that poured forth was thick, yellowish, and began eating through the floor where it splashed. "Hydrochloric acid concentration at 38%, announced a technician. "Deploying now." The acid hit SCP-682 like a chemical waterfall. This finally got a reaction. The creature's roar became something else. Pain, rage, and something that might have been surprise. Its regeneration slowed as flesh dissolved faster than it could rebuild. "It's working." Morrison's voice carried steel-hard satisfaction. "Drive it back toward containment cell 7B. Once it's in position, we seal and flood." Grimm advanced with his men, laser guns providing continuous fire to herd the beast. The creature's eyes, when had they become multiple eyes, splitting across its skull like a spider's, fixed on him with undiluted hatred. "You," it spoke, and Grimm's blood froze because Xenos weren't supposed to speak Gothic, weren't supposed to sound so human while being so utterly alien. New flesh, new world, still the same weakness, still the same disgusting mortality. "It talks," Grimm breathed. "It does more than that," Vance said grimly. "It's sapient, intelligent. It understands what it's doing. And it's killed more humans than most armies manage in a century." The creature surged forward with renewed fury, and Grimm understood what made the Foundation's job different from his. They weren't fighting mindless beasts or honor-driven Xenos warriors. They were fighting things that thought, planned, and hated with a clarity that made them infinitely more dangerous. "Fall back to checkpoint 3, Morrison ordered. "We're 30 meters from the containment cell. Keep it coming." The fighting retreat was textbook, something the Cadians had perfected across 1,000 battlefields. Fire, withdraw, fire again. The acid continued to pour, and 682 continued to adapt. Its hide was developing a waxy coating, sheeting the acid away from vital organs. It was learning, growing, becoming something worse. They reached the containment cell, a massive chamber with walls that looked thick enough to stop a battle tank. 682 crashed through the entrance, driven more by rage than tactics, and the Foundation personnel slammed controls. Blast doors dropped with a thunder of finality. The acid pumps redoubled their flow. Through reinforced viewing ports, Grim watched the creature thrash in a pool of its own dissolution and rebirth, trapped in an endless cycle of damage and regeneration. Containment achieved, Morrison said, her voice tight with exhaustion. Acid concentration will maintain at 60% until we can repair the primary containment systems. Sergeant, your men just helped recontain one of the most dangerous entities in Foundation custody. Thank you. Grim nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on the creature. It had stopped thrashing. Now it simply floated in the acid, its multiple eyes open, staring at the viewport, at him, and it was smiling. Director, Grim said slowly, what else do you have in here? Morrison's expression became carefully neutral. 26 other entities that violate natural law in various ways. Most are secure. Some are... She paused as her radio crackled with urgent chatter. Her face went pale. Oh God, not now. Please, not now. What is it? SCP-173. It's moved. It's out of its vault. 3 levels above, in a section of Site-01 that had suffered structural damage during the dimensional transition, something scraped against concrete. The sound was subtle, deliberate, patient. Private Lucas Thorne had been assigned guard duty at what the Foundation called a critical intersection point. They'd given him a simple order. Keep your eyes on the statue at the end of the corridor. Don't blink, don't look away, under any circumstances. It was, without question, the strangest order Thorne had received in his 3 years of Imperial Guard service. But after seeing what they'd just fought in the lower levels, he was willing to take the Foundation's warnings seriously. The statue was crude. Rough concrete formed into a vaguely humanoid shape. It had been positioned at the T-junction ahead, visible from Thorne's position. Foundation personnel had placed it there deliberately, they said, after finding it during a sweep of damaged sectors. Why don't you just destroy it? Thorne had asked. We tried, the Foundation security officer had replied. Conventional weapons don't affect it. And the moment you stop looking at it, it moves. Fast, it breaks necks. It's killed hundreds of our personnel over the decades. So we look at it. Always. Thorne understood guard duty. He'd stood watch over ammunition depots, noble estates, even a Ministorum shrine once. He could stand here and stare at a statue. His laser gun was charged. His eyes were sharp. He stared. Minutes passed. The statue didn't move because he didn't let it move. This was simple. Boring even. His eyes began to water. Thorne blinked. In that fraction of a second, the statue was 10 meters closer. Holy throne! Thorne's laser gun came up instinctively, but he forced himself to keep his eyes open, unblinking, even as they burned. The statue stood motionless, but it was no longer at the intersection. It was in the corridor, and it was facing him. Command, this is Thorne at Checkpoint 9. The statue moved. It's... His vox crackled. Do not take your eyes off it. We're sending a containment team. Hold position. Hold position. Simple order. But his eyes were watering from the effort of not blinking. The dry air of the facility wasn't helping. He could feel the pressure building, the biological imperative to blink becoming overwhelming. He blinked again. The statue was 5 meters away. Terror, cold and primal, flooded Thorne's system. This wasn't combat. This wasn't an enemy he could shoot. This was something worse. A predator that exploited the fundamental limitations of human biology. How long? He gasped into the vox. 2 minutes. Keep looking at it, Private. Your life depends on it. 2 minutes. His eyes felt like they were on fire. Tears streamed down his cheeks, but he didn't dare wipe them away. The statue stood motionless, its crude face somehow conveying malevolent patience. Thorn's vision began to blur. He was going to blink. His body demanded it. He blinked. The statue was 1 meter away. He could see the reddish-brown stains on its concrete surface, could see the crude approximation of hands reaching forward, could see the infinite patience in its stillness. 30 seconds, the Vox shouted. Thorn's finger tightened on his laser gun trigger, knowing it would do nothing but needing something to hold on to. His eyes screamed. His vision wavered. He wasn't going to make it. He blinked. The hands touched his throat. A spotlight blazed to life, so bright it was painful. Foundation personnel burst into the corridor. 3 of them, all with their eyes locked on the statue. They moved with practiced synchronization, never once looking away, boxing the entity in overlapping fields of vision. "We've got eyes on it," the team leader said. "Private, step back slowly. Don't turn around, just back toward us." Thorn did, his legs shaking, his eyes finally able to blink freely as others maintained observation. The statue stood motionless, frozen by the weight of multiple gazes. "What in the Emperor's name is that thing?" Thorn gasped. "Proof that the universe has monsters worse than demons," the Foundation officer replied. "Because at least demons can be killed. This just is, and it will be, long after we're all gone." As Thorn was escorted away, he looked back once. The statue hadn't moved. But in his mind, in the space between heartbeats, he could imagine it reaching forward through time and space, waiting for the inevitable moment when someone would look away just a little too long. Across Site-01, alarms began to sound once more. Different alarms, new breaches. The Foundation had been in the 41st millennium for less than 6 hours. It was going to be a very long night. The Undying Vigilance received its second unexpected transmission at 400 hours, ship time. Captain Korev had been reviewing after-action reports from the Cadian deployment when his Vox operator's face went ashen. "Captain, we're being hailed by..." "I don't know what to call it, sir. The signature is coming from high orbit. No ship, no structure, just a transmission appearing directly on our channels." Korev felt the hairs on his neck rise. "Play it." The voice that emerged from the Vox was wrong in ways that transcended mere audio distortion. It spoke in Gothic, but every syllable carried harmonics that shouldn't exist, frequencies that made the bridge crew wince. "Imperial vessel. This is Inquisitor Cassandra Vale of the Ordo Malleus. I am en route to Persephone Thoralft aboard the strike cruiser Eternal Pyre. You will maintain position and provide all intelligence regarding the anomalous structure that has manifested in your patrol sector. This matter now falls under inquisitorial jurisdiction. The God Emperor's judgment is coming." The transmission ended. Korev sat back in his command throne, equal parts relieved and concerned. The Inquisition's involvement meant 2 things. Whatever was happening was serious enough to warrant their attention, and his responsibility for it was about to become someone else's problem. "Vox the Foundation site," he ordered. "Inform them that the Inquisition is coming, and they should prepare to answer very difficult questions." Inquisitor Cassandra Vale had spent 30 years hunting demons across the Imperium. She had banished greater demons, purged corrupted worlds, and once stared into the eye of terror itself without losing her sanity. She was a weapon of the Emperor's will, hardened by faith and tempered by warfare against the ruinous powers. But as she stood in the teleportarium chamber of the Eternal Pyre, preparing to board the anomalous structure. She felt something she hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. The structure's machine spirits are strange, reported tech priest Dominus Zahn, his mechadendrites twitching with agitation. They respond to our hails but do not recognize any proper protocols. They operate without prayer, without ritual. It's as if they function through pure logic alone. His tone suggested this was heretical in the extreme. Heretic, then? Concluded Brother Sergeant Matthias of the Grey Knights, the massive warrior resplendent in silver armor. He and his squad of 5 had been assigned to Vale's retinue specifically for this mission. If demons were involved, the Grey Knights were humanity's ultimate solution. Perhaps, Vale said carefully, or perhaps something we haven't encountered before. Ready your storm bolters, brothers, but do not fire unless I give the order. We're here to investigate first, purge second. The teleportarium hummed with building power. Reality bent. And then they were elsewhere. Site Director Morrison had exactly 90 seconds warning before the Inquisition arrived. It was enough time to reach the facility's main receiving area, to straighten her uniform, and to remind herself that panic would help no one. The air shimmered, and 7 figures materialized in a burst of displaced atmosphere. 6 were giants in ornate power armor, their weapons humming with lethal potential. The 7th was a woman in armor of black and crimson, carrying a sword that crackled with power fields and holding a book bound in leather that might have been human skin. "I am Inquisitor Cassandra Vale," the woman announced, her voice carrying absolute authority. "You will explain what you are, how you came to be here, and what manner of abominations you harbor within these walls. Speak truthfully, for I will know if you lie." Morrison had dealt with government officials, military brass, and UN Security Council members. She drew on every ounce of that experience now. "Inquisitor, I'm Site Director Catherine Morrison of the SCP Foundation. We're an independent organization dedicated to securing, containing, and protecting humanity from anomalous threats. Yesterday, by our timeline, we were conducting dimensional research when a catastrophic failure sent our entire facility through space-time into your universe. We're not hostile. We're not here by choice. And right now we're focused on preventing multiple existential threats from escaping into your population." "Anomalous threats," Vale repeated, her augmetic eye. Morrison hadn't noticed it initially, whirring as it focused. "Define." "Entities, objects, and phenomena that violate natural law. We have one creature that cannot be killed and adapts to any damage. We have an object that moves when unobserved and kills by snapping necks. We have a dimensional predator that phases through solid matter. We have a plague that turns all biological matter into a corrosive slime. Should I continue?" The Grey Knights shifted, weapons rising slightly. Brother Sergeant Matthias spoke, his voice resonating through his helmet. "These sound like demonic manifestations. Have you been trafficking with the ruinous powers?" "I don't know what that means," Morrison said honestly. "We don't have demons where we come from. We have anomalies, things that exist in defiance of understood physics. We contain them because leaving them free would result in human extinction." Vale studied Morrison with an intensity that felt physical. The Inquisitor's hand rested on her sword, but she hadn't drawn it. "Show me," she finally said. "Show me these anomalies. I will determine whether you are heretics, fools, or something else entirely." Morrison made a decision that would define everything that followed. "I'll show you SCP-682, the creature your Imperial Guard helped us recontain. But I warn you, it will say things. terrible things. It's intelligent, it's malevolent, and it wants nothing more than to see all life end. Don't let it manipulate you. I have withstood the whispers of Tzeentch's demons, Vale replied. I think I can handle one creature's ravings. We'll see, Morrison said quietly. The observation deck overlooking Containment Cell 7B was crowded. Morrison, Vale, the Grey Knights, Tech Priest Zahn, and Dr. Vance all pressed against the reinforced viewing ports. Below, suspended in a tank of hydrochloric acid, SCP-682 floated in chemical torment. The creature had changed again. Its hide was thicker, layered with what looked like crystalline structures that shed the acid more effectively. Its eyes, now 6 of them, arranged in asymmetric clusters, tracked their arrival with focused hatred. Emperor's mercy, Brother Matthias breathed. That is no demon. That is something else. Play the audio, Morrison instructed. Speakers crackled to life, broadcasting the sounds from the containment cell. SCP-682's breathing was deep, deliberate, and accompanied by a grinding noise as its body continuously repaired itself. Hello, new audience, the creature said, its voice a wet rasp that somehow formed perfect Gothic. Come to stare at the monster? Come to feel superior because you stand on the right side of the glass? You're just like all the others. Meat, temporary, disgusting. Vale's hand tightened on her sword. It speaks, cogently. It does more than speak, Dr. Vance said. It argues, it philosophizes. It has debated ethics with our personnel while simultaneously trying to kill them. We've had it in containment for 107 years in our timeline. It's breached containment over 24 times. We've never found a way to kill it, only to contain it. Everything can be killed, Brother Matthias said with the certainty of a man who'd killed greater demons. SCP-682's multiple eyes focused on the Grey Knight. Oh, silver armor, enhanced genetics, psychic wards etched into every plate. You're the local super soldiers, aren't you? I can smell your arrogance from here. You think you're apex predators. The creature's laugh was like rocks being ground to powder. You're just better fed cattle. The Grey Knight raised his storm bolter, but Vale held up a hand. It seeks to provoke, to make us act rashly. She leaned closer to the glass. Creature, do you serve any of the dark gods? Gods? 682's tone shifted to something like amusement. I don't serve, I don't worship, I simply am. And I will be here long after your gods, whatever they are, have been forgotten. I've survived attempts to kill me involving black holes, reality erasure, and bombardment by weapons that unmake matter at the quantum level. What makes you think your primitive weapons would fare any better? Tech Priest Zahn was examining his data slate with growing agitation. Inquisitor, this creature's cellular structure is adapting, even now, in real time. I'm detecting quantum-level restructuring in response to the acid. At this rate, full immunity will develop within 72 hours, which is why we'll transfer it to a new containment cell with different methodology before then, Morrison said. This is what we do, Inquisitor, every day, forever. Because the alternative is letting things like this loose on an unsuspecting population. Vale was silent for a long moment, her augmetic eye whirring as it analyzed the creature below. Finally, she spoke. You're not heretics. You're not demon worshippers. You're... She paused, searching for words. You're doing the Emperor's work without knowing he exists. You're containing threats that even the Inquisition might struggle to face. Does this mean you'll help us? Morrison asked carefully. "It means I won't execute you immediately," Vale replied. "But understand this. You are now operating within Imperium space. Your methods may need to adapt. Your containment protocols must align with Imperial law. And if I determine that any of your anomalies pose a threat equivalent to demonic incursion, I will not hesitate to recommend exterminatus of this entire world." "Fair enough," Morrison said, meaning none of it. The Foundation answered to no authority but itself. But right now, she needed the Inquisition's resources more than she needed ideological purity. "Show me the rest," Vale commanded. "Every anomaly, every containment cell. I will assess each one, and we will determine how to proceed." As they left the observation deck, SCP-682's voice echoed through the speakers one final time. "Run along, little humans. Make your plans. Build your alliances. It won't matter. I am patient. I am inevitable. And when I break free, and I will break free, I'll show you what real hatred looks like." The lights flickered. Somewhere in the facility, something scraped against stone, and in a dimensional pocket that shouldn't exist but did, something very old and very patient felt the presence of new prey and began to hunt. The tour of Site-01's containment facilities lasted 6 hours and fundamentally challenged everything Inquisitor Vale thought she understood about threats to humanity. She had seen demons that wore human flesh like clothing. She had witnessed worlds consumed by chaos corruption. She had personally banished entities that existed purely to spread madness and death. But the Foundation's catalog of horrors was different. Clinical, methodical. Each anomaly was documented with scientific precision, its properties cataloged, its containment procedures refined through trial and error, measured in decades. SCP-096, Dr. Vance explained as they stood before a reinforced containment cell, is what we call the Shy Guy. Humanoid, emaciated, extremely docile unless someone views its face, either directly or through photographs, video, or even artistic representation. Once someone sees its face, it enters an aggressive state, covers its face, and becomes inconsolable with distress for 1 to 2 minutes. Then it begins pursuit. "Pursuit?" Brother Matthias asked. "Of the person who saw its face. It will travel any distance, break through any barrier, kill anything in its path until it reaches its target. Then it kills them, messily. Once the target is eliminated, it returns to docility." Vance's expression was grim. "We learned this the hard way. 4 containment breaches, 83 deaths, including personnel, civilians, and 1 entire MTF unit. Now we keep it in complete darkness, no visual surveillance, and anyone who enters wears scrambler goggles that prevent facial recognition." Vale studied the cell. The walls were scarred with what looked like claw marks. Deep ones. And if an entire regiment saw its face, it would kill them all, one by one if necessary. It cannot be stopped, only avoided. We classify it as Euclid. Dangerous, but containable with proper protocols. Tech Priest Zahn made the sign of the Aquila nervously. This is an abomination against reason itself. How can something pursue a target across any distance? What mechanism drives it? "We don't know," Vance admitted. "We've studied it for decades. We have theories: quantum entanglement, psychic connection, violation of causality, but no definitive answers. That's the nature of anomalies. They exist in defiance of natural law." They moved to the next cell, and the next, each one more disturbing than the last. SCP-049, the Plague Doctor. A humanoid entity dressed in medieval Plague Doctor garments that killed through touch and attempted to cure the dead, through invasive surgery that created violent zombies. It spoke politely, believed itself to be helping, and had killed over 300 people in containment alone. SCP-106, the Old Man, a humanoid entity that appeared elderly and decayed, but could phase through solid matter and drag victims into a pocket dimension of endless corridors and decay. Containment required a dedicated cell with acid barriers and a live human lure in emergencies. SCP-939, pack predators that mimicked human voices to lure prey, possessed no eyes, and hunted purely through echolocation and voice replication. They had killed 12 personnel during the dimensional transition when their containment had briefly failed. By the third hour, even Brother Matthias, a gray knight who had fought in the very heart of demon-infested space hulks, looked unsettled. "How many of these things do you contain?" he asked. "In this facility, 27 active anomalies," Morrison replied. "Globally, across all Foundation sites, before we were displaced, we maintained containment of over 6,000 documented anomalies, with new discoveries every month." 6,000, Vale repeated, her voice hollow. "The Imperium has fought 10,000 years to hold back chaos. You're saying you face 6,000 individual threats, each unique, each requiring specialized containment?" "We do what we must," Morrison said simply. "Someone has to." They reached a section of the facility that had been sealed with multiple blast doors. Warning signs in Foundation standard covered every surface. Cognitohazard risk, mimetic kill agent, Class A amnesiacs required for all personnel. "This section houses our information-based threats," Dr. Vance explained. "Anomalies that kill or corrupt through knowledge itself. Images that cause heart attacks when viewed. Mathematical equations that drive researchers to suicide. Audio files that cause listeners to violently assault others. We can't show you these. The risk is too great." "Information as weapon," Tech Priest Zahn murmured. "The Mechanicus understands this concept. Forbidden data, scrap code that corrupts machine spirits. But this," he gestured at the sealed section, "this is something else entirely." Vale made a decision. "Site Director Morrison, I'm authorizing limited cooperation between the Foundation and the Inquisition. Your containment protocols are sound. Better than sound, they're extraordinary. But you're in Imperium space now, and that brings complications you're not prepared for." "Such as?" Morrison asked warily. "Such as the fact that your arrival has been detected by forces that make your anomalies look manageable." Vale's expression darkened. "We've intercepted Vox chatter from Chaos cultists in the Underhive. They know something impossible has appeared. They're calling it a gift from Tzeentch. And where cultists gather, demons follow." As if summoned by her words, the facility's alarms erupted in a cacophony of warnings. "Perimeter breach!" a voice shouted over the intercom. "Multiple contacts, Sector 12. Unknown energy signatures. They're not Foundation personnel, and they're not Imperial." The transmission cut to screams, then laughter, high-pitched, manic laughter that spoke of sanity shattered and remade into something terrible. "Chaos," Brother Matthias growled, his storm bolter already in his hands. "They've come for the anomalies." Vale's face became a mask of cold fury. "Morrison, seal all containment cells. Nothing gets in or out. Gray Knights with me. We purge this corruption before it spreads." But Morrison was already moving, her radio pressed to her lips. "All personnel, implement Code Black protocols. We have hostile intrusion by unknown forces. MTF units Epsilon 11 and NU7 deploy to Sector 12. Lethal force is authorized." Protect the containment cells at all costs. As they ran towards Sector 12, Vale caught glimpses of what was happening through security feeds. Figures in twisted armor, their bodies warped by chaos mutations, were cutting through Foundation security with bolters and chain axes. But they weren't heading for the exits. They were heading deeper, toward the containment cells. They want to free your anomalies, Vale realized with horror. They think they can control them, use them as weapons. They can't, Morrison said flatly. No one can control them. That's why we contain them. If Chaos forces free SCP-682 or SCP-106 or any of the others, then we'll have a disaster that makes demonic possession look manageable, Vale finished. They arrived at Sector 12 to find a war zone. Foundation security, armed with sleek automatic weapons Vale didn't recognize, had established a defensive perimeter. They fought with the discipline of professional soldiers, but they were clearly out of their depth against chaos-enhanced warriors. A cultist, his face split by too many mouths, raised a bolter toward Dr. Vance. Brother Matthias's storm bolters sang, and the cultist exploded in a shower of blessed rounds. For the Emperor! The Grey Knights roared, advancing into the melee like silver avalanches. The Chaos Warriors turned to face this new threat, recognizing the Grey Knights for what they were, the Imperium's ultimate demon hunters. They howled in rage and religious ecstasy, charging forward with the fearlessness of the damned. The corridor became a killing ground. Storm bolters spoke in thunderous volleys. Foundation security weapons chattered with automatic fire. Chain's words screamed as they met force blades. Blood, some red, some colors that shouldn't exist, painted the sterile walls. And through it all, one Chaos Sorcerer stood at the back, his armor decorated with eyes that wept blood, his hands wreathed in eldritch fire. He raised a staff topped with a leering demon skull and chanted words in a language that predated human civilization. The air split open. A rift to the immaterium tore through reality, and things began to crawl through. Pink and blue horrors, lesser demons of Tzeentch, gibbered and capered as they materialized. Behind them, something larger began to manifest, something with too many wings and not enough faces. Demon! Vale shouted, drawing her sword. The blade ignited with holy fire. Grey Knights, with me. Establish a sanctified perimeter. But the demons weren't heading for the defenders. They were heading for the containment cells. Speyer, one pink horror reached SCP-106's cell and began to melt through the acid barrier with warp fire. Another group of blue horrors surrounded SCP-939's containment, their chaotic presence disrupting the electronic locks. Morrison's voice cut through the chaos with the authority of someone who'd faced impossible situations before. All personnel, fall back to secondary defensive positions. Grey Knights, do what you do. Foundation MTF units, prepare containment breach protocols for multiple SCP entities. If they get out, SCP-106 cell door dissolved. From the darkness within, something old and patient began to emerge. The old man stepped into the corridor, his decayed form seeming to absorb light itself. He looked at the demons, at the cultists, at the defenders, and smiled with a mouth that contained far too many teeth. Then he phased through the floor and was gone. Where did it go? Brother Matthias demanded. Everywhere, Dr. Vance said, her voice tight with fear. The old man doesn't hunt in our dimension. He phases through solid matter, drags victims into his pocket dimension, and hunts them there. He's loose in the facility, and we have no way to track him. A scream echoed from somewhere in the lower levels. Then another. Then silence. The Chaos Sorcerer laughed. Your precious anomalies are free. Let them tear this facility apart. Let them show the Imperium what true horror looks like. Inquisitor Vale leveled her sword at the sorcerer. You've doomed us all, heretic. These things don't distinguish between chaos and imperial. They kill indiscriminately. Then it will be glorious, the sorcerer shrieked. The Grey Knights advanced, their psychic wards blazing, their faith made manifest. The demons turned to face them, recognizing worthy prey. And somewhere in the facility, in a cell that no one had checked in the chaos, SCP-173 heard the sounds of combat and felt the vibrations of running feet. It waited, patient, inevitable, for someone to look away. The Chaos Sorcerer's triumph lasted precisely 12 seconds. Then reality in Sector 12 began to unravel in ways even Tzeentch's servants found disturbing. The first indication was the light. It didn't dim so much as it unbrightened, a subtle subtraction of illumination that left the corridor feeling hollow, as if the shadows were the true substance and the light mere illusion. The air grew cold, not the chill of void exposure, but the deep, penetrating cold of a place that had never known warmth. SCP-106 emerged from the floor directly behind the sorcerer. The old man didn't rush. He moved with a slow, deliberate shuffle, his decayed form leaving behind a trail of corrosive slime that ate through the deck plating. The sorcerer turned, his warped sight perceiving something that defied even demonic understanding. An entity that existed partially in real space, partially in a pocket dimension of its own creation, and completely outside the great game of chaos. The sorcerer began. SCP-106's hand shot out, moving faster than something so ancient should be capable of. It didn't grasp with fingers so much as it phased through the sorcerer's chest plate, bypassing both physical armor and psychic wards as if they weren't there. The sorcerer screamed, not in pain, but in profound confusion, as his connection to the warp was severed, cut off by something that didn't obey the rules of the Immaterium. Then SCP-106 pulled. The sorcerer's body didn't move. Instead, a ghostly, semi-transparent version of him was dragged free of his physical form, struggling silently as the old man pulled him down through the floor. Both figures vanished, leaving behind only the sorcerer's empty armor and a fading psychic echo of utter bewilderment. The demons hesitated. Pink horrors gibbered uncertainly. Blue horrors ceased their capering. The larger entity that had been manifesting at the rift's edge paused its emergence, multiple eyes focusing on the spot where the sorcerer had been taken. It doesn't recognize them as prey, Dr. Vance breathed, watching from behind the Grey Knight's line. It sees them as intruders in its hunting grounds. Can it kill demons? Inquisitor Vale asked, her sword still raised. We don't know. We've never had demons to test it on. But it can certainly remove them from this dimension. As if to prove her point, SCP-106 phased back through the ceiling, now holding the ghostly form of the sorcerer in one hand. The sorcerer's essence struggled weakly, his form flickering between solidity and translucence. The old man examined him for a moment, then, with a gesture of casual dismissal, tossed him toward the warp rift. The sorcerer's essence struck the rift and dissolved into screaming particles that were sucked back into the Immaterium. Not banished with holy ritual, but discarded like refuse. The demons recognized threat. They turned as one, abandoning their assault on the containment cells to face this new enemy. Pink horrors unleashed bolts of warp fire. Blue horrors charged with claws extended. The larger demon, a flamer of Tzeentch, fully manifested, its burning form shedding heat that warped the air. SCP-106 didn't flinch. The warp fire passed through him as if he weren't there. The charging horrors found their claws meeting empty air as he phased out of existence, then reappeared behind them. His hands moved with methodical precision, each touch sending a demon back to the warp, not through banishment, but through simple, brutal dimensional displacement. He wasn't fighting them. He was cleaning house. Emperor's teeth, Brother Matthias whispered. It's treating demons like pests. To him they probably are, Morrison said, her voice grim. He's existed for who knows how long, hunting in his own private dimension. He doesn't care about chaos, the Imperium, or the Foundation. He just wants his territory back. Within minutes, the demonic incursion had been reduced to a single flamer of Tzinch, which hovered uncertainly, its form flickering as it tried to comprehend an enemy that didn't respond to any known form of attack. SCP-106 looked at the demon. Then he looked at the warp rift. Then he did something the Foundation had never documented. He gestured. The flamer of Tzinch screamed as unseen forces grabbed it and hurled it back through the rift. A moment later, SCP-106 gestured again, and the rift itself began to close, not through psychic countermeasures or holy ritual, but through what appeared to be simple spatial manipulation, as if he were smoothing out a wrinkle in reality. Silence descended, broken only by the crackle of damaged systems and the moans of wounded personnel. SCP-106 turned his attention to the remaining Chaos cultists. 3 of them, having witnessed their sorcerer's fate, were backing away toward an emergency exit. The old man began to shuffle toward them. "Stop him," Inquisitor Vale ordered. "We need those cultists alive for interrogation." Foundation security raised their weapons, but hesitated. Shooting at SCP-106 was notoriously ineffective. Bullets passed through him. Energy weapons dissipated harmlessly. The Grey Knights advanced, their psychic auras blazing, but SCP-106 simply phased through the floor before they could reach him. A second later, he emerged behind the cultists. One scream was cut short as he dragged a cultist down through the deck. The remaining 2 broke into a run. They didn't get far. SCP-106 caught them at the emergency door, taking them one after the other with the same methodical disinterest. Then he stood alone in the corridor, surrounded by the dead and the dying. His head tilted as if listening to something only he could hear. "Containment team, move in," Morrison ordered quietly into her radio. "But do not approach. Set up perimeter at 50 meters. Prepare reinforced acid barriers." "He just saved us," Dr. Vance said, her voice hushed. "He removed competition," Morrison corrected. "There's a difference. And now he's loose in the facility with multiple potential prey sources. We need to recontain him before he decides to expand his hunting grounds." SCP-106 looked directly at the observation window where they stood. His empty eye sockets seemed to stare right through the reinforced glass, through armor and flesh, into something deeper. He raised one decayed hand and pointed, not at them, but at something below. Then he phased through the floor again, heading downward. "Where's he going?" Vale demanded. Morrison pulled up a facility schematic on her tablet. Her face went pale. "Sub-level 9. That's where we have SCP-914. "The what?" "The Clockworks, a massive device that can refine or alter matter. We keep it contained because its outputs are unpredictable. But more importantly," she zoomed in on the schematic, "the most direct path to Sub-level 9 goes right past SCP-173's secondary containment chamber, the one we moved it to after the earlier incident." The intercom crackled. "Director, this is MTF Epsilon 11. We have visual on SCP-106. He's moving toward the western stairwell. Do we engage?" Negative, Morrison said immediately. Maintain observation only. Do not interfere unless he approaches a critical containment cell. And whatever you do not let him pass any personnel who might be... A scream echoed through the Vox channel, then the sound of something snapping, then silence. Looking away from SCP-173, Morrison finished grimly. The pieces clicked together in Vale's mind with dreadful clarity. SCP-106 was heading downward. The only personnel in that sector were the team guarding SCP-173. And if they had to choose between watching the statue and avoiding the old man, "We need to get down there," Vale said. Now. But they were too late. By the time they reached the western stairwell, they found the containment team dead. All 3 Foundation guards lay with their necks broken at impossible angles. SCP-173 stood motionless at the end of the corridor, its concrete form spattered with fresh blood. And the door to SCP-173's containment chamber stood open. SCP-106 was gone, having phased through the walls rather than risk the corridor. But he'd left behind an opportunity. The statue had prey. Morrison stared at the open door, then at the dead guards, then at the statue. "Oh no, 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 no." "What?" Vale demanded. "The door's open. The containment protocols require that door remain sealed at all times unless SCP-173 is being transported under direct observation by at least 3 personnel. With it open." She keyed her radio. "All personnel, this is the director. SCP-173 is potentially uncontained. Implement Protocol 173 Theta immediately. All corridors in Sectors 7 through 12 are to be placed under continuous video surveillance. No one moves alone. No one blinks alone." But as the alarm sounded and the facility went into lockdown, another problem presented itself. From deep below, in Sub-Level 9, came the sound of machinery activating. A rhythmic clunk-click whir that built in intensity until the very walls vibrated with it. SCP-912 was running, and someone, or something, had fed it raw materials. The sound of SCP-912 was like a grandfather clock swallowing its own gears, metallic, rhythmic, and deeply wrong. By the time Morrison, Vale, and their combined teams reached Sub-Level 9, the massive device was in the final stages of a refinement cycle. SCP-913 filled an entire chamber, a colossal assembly of brass, copper, and polished wood covered in dials, levers, and incomprehensible controls. It looked like something a mad watchmaker might build after studying Da Vinci's nightmares. At its center sat 2 large chambers labeled Input and Output, connected by a complex series of gears and conveyors. The input chamber was empty. The output chamber contained something new. SCP-106 stood before the machine, watching as the final gears ground to a halt. The old man's posture was different now. Less the shuffling predator, more the focused artisan observing his work. In his hand, he held a twisted piece of metal that Vale recognized after a moment as a Chaos cultist's shoulder guard, now warped and half dissolved by the old man's corrosive touch. He fed it corrupted material. Tech Priest Zahn breathed, his mechadendrites twitching in horror. He fed the machine a tainted artifact. The output chamber hissed open. Inside lay a single object, a mask. It was wrought from the same metal as the shoulder guard, but refined to a mirror finish, shaped into a smooth, featureless oval with only slight indentations for eyes and mouth. It looked cold, perfect, utterly alien. SCP-106 reached in and lifted the mask. He examined it for a long moment, then did something unprecedented in Foundation records. He placed it against his own decayed face. The metal did not touch skin. Instead, it hovered a millimeter from his features, held in place by some unseen force. And where it hovered, reality clarified. The corrosive aura surrounding the old man diminished. The sense of wrongness that followed him like a shadow receded slightly, as if contained. The mask wasn't just an object, it was a tool, a focusing lens for his anomalous properties. He used the machine to craft something, Dr. Vance whispered, her researcher's mind racing. He understands its function. He used it to refine a piece of warp-tainted material into something that benefits him. Heretic, Zahn spat, his mechanical voice trembling with outrage. That machine is an abomination. It works without prayer, without ritual, without the guidance of the machine god. And it has been used to empower a Xenos entity. It's not a Xenos, Morrison said absently, her eyes fixed on the mask. And the Clockworks doesn't empower anything. It refines. It alters. The question is what exactly he asked it to make. As if hearing her, SCP-106 turned his head, the mask turning with him, and looked directly at the observation window. Behind the featureless metal, something shifted. Then he raised his free hand and pointed again, this time not downward, but upward, toward the surface. Then he phased through the ceiling and was gone. He's leaving the facility, Vale realized. He's expanding his hunting grounds, Morrison corrected grimly. The Underhive of Persephone Nortund has approximately 14 billion inhabitants. To him, that's not a city. It's a buffet. We must pursue, Brother Matthias boomed. We cannot allow such a creature to roam free among Imperial citizens. You don't pursue the old man, Dr. Vance said, her voice hollow. You contain him. And to do that, you need the right tools, the right environment, and a lot of luck. If he reaches the Underhive proper, we'll never get him back. He'll establish a territory in the deepest, most labyrinthine sections, a hunt forever. Then we stop him before he leaves, Vale said, turning to Morrison. You have containment protocols? What do you need? Morrison's mind was already racing through possibilities. Acid barriers, lots of them. He can phase through solid matter, but he dislikes passing through corrosive liquids. It disrupts his connection to his pocket dimension. We need to herd him toward a prepared containment cell. But to do that, we need to know where he is. And we need to flush him out of the walls and floors. The Grey Knights can track him, Vale said. Their psychic senses can perceive his unnatural presence. No, Morrison said sharply. Psionic activity agitates him, makes him more unpredictable. We have non-psychic tracking methods. Motion sensors tuned to his specific phase shift frequency, residual corrosive trail detection. We use those. A new voice crackled over the Vox. Captain Korev from the Undying Vigilance. Inquisitor, Site Director. We have a complication. Another one? Vale asked wearily. Worse. Long-range augurs have detected a Tyranid splinter fleet entering the system's edge. Biomass signatures consistent with Hive Fleet Leviathan. Estimated time until Vanguard organisms reach Persephone Dorothy, 6 hours. Silence hung in the chamber, thick and heavy. Chaos cultists, uncontained anomalies, and now Tyranids, Vale summarized. This world is becoming a focal point for every threat in the galaxy. There's more, Korev continued. The Tyranids aren't just heading for the planet. Their course suggests they're being drawn to your facility's location. Something about your anomalies is attracting them. Morrison closed her eyes. Of course. SCP-682 emits a constant low-level biological hatred field. SCP-939 uses sophisticated pheromone markers. Half the entities in containment emit some form of exotic energy or biological signal. To the hive mind, we must look like a bonfire of interesting genetic material. Then we have a simple priority list, Vale said, her inquisitorial training cutting through the chaos. First, recontain SCP-106 before he reaches the population. Second, secure all other anomalies against both internal breach and external assault. Third, prepare this facility to withstand Tyranid invasion. And fourth, pray the Emperor grants us a miracle. We don't pray for miracles, Inquisitor, Morrison said, opening her eyes. They held the cold light of calculation. We engineer them. Dr. Vance, initiate Protocol Pandora's Box. Authorization Morrison 7 Zulu. Vance went pale. Director, that protocol is for... I know what it's for, and I know the risks. But we have multiple Keter-class entities, either loose or at risk of being loosed, a demonic incursion already attempted, and a hive fleet on the way. We are out of conservative options. Vance nodded, her professionalism overriding her fear. She pulled out a data slate and began inputting commands. What is this protocol? Vale asked. A contingency for when standard containment is no longer viable, Morrison said. We have a handful of anomalies that are cooperative, or at least not actively hostile to human life. Under Pandora's Box protocols, we can negotiate limited, controlled release in exchange for assistance with containment of more dangerous entities. You're going to use monsters to fight monsters. We're going to use specialized tools to address specialized problems. It's what the Foundation has always done. As Vance worked, the facility's intercom system activated with a new, calm voice. Protocol Pandora's Box initiated. Selective containment override enabled. Please state which entities you wish to interface with. Morrison took a deep breath. Begin with SCP-999, then SCP-131. Then SCP-073. The names meant nothing to Vale, but Vance's reaction to the last one was telling. She actually flinched. Director, Cain is unpredictable, but he's capable, and he understands deals. Now let's move. We have an old man to catch. They split up. Vale and the Grey Knights moved to coordinate with Imperial forces, establishing a perimeter around the facility. Morrison and Vance headed for the Special Containment Wing, where the more cooperative anomalies were kept. As they moved through the corridors, they passed a security team setting up heavy weapons positions at a major intersection. The sergeant in charge nodded to Morrison. Preparing for Tyranid breach, Director. We'll hold as long as we can. Make sure you have overlapping fields of fire on the ceilings and walls, Morrison advised. Some of them climb. Yes, ma'am. They reached a containment cell painted a cheerful yellow. The door bore a simple placard, SCP-999. Morrison pressed her hand to a scanner, then spoke into an intercom. 999, we need to talk. The door hissed open. Inside was not a whore, but something that looked like a pile of orange gelatin, quivering with apparent excitement. As they entered, the pile surged forward, forming tentacles that wrapped around Morrison's legs in what could only be described as a hug. A wave of pure, unadulterated happiness washed over both women, a physiological effect of 9999's presence. Hello, little one, Morrison said, her stern expression softening slightly. We have a problem. Something bad is loose. Something that hurts people. We need your help to make it go back where it belongs. 999 quivered, forming a shape that roughly resembled a thumbs up. It understood. It always understood. Good. Stay here for now. We'll come get you when it's time." They moved to the next cell. SCP-131-A and B, two teardrop-shaped creatures with a single large eye, nicknamed the iPods. They chirped happily at the humans, bouncing on eye stalks, non-hostile, curious, and importantly, they never blinked. "You two are going to help us with the statue," Morrison told them. "You're going to watch it for us? Can you do that?" The iPods chirped affirmatively. Finally, they reached the last cell. The door was heavy, reinforced, and bore more warning signs than any other. Morrison paused before it, gathering herself. "Cain is dangerous, Director," Vance warned quietly. "I know. But he's also the best negotiator we have when dealing with other anomalies. And right now, we need to negotiate with 106. She opened the door. The chamber inside was Spartan. A simple bed, a desk, a bookshelf, and sitting at the desk, reading a data slate, was a man who looked perfectly ordinary, except for the fact that his skin appeared to be made of polished stone. And where his right hand should have been, there was a smooth, featureless stump. SCP-073, Cain, looked up. His expression was neutral, but his eyes held an ancient weariness. "Director Morrison," he said, his voice calm and measured. "You only come to me when things have gone terribly wrong. So, how terrible is it this time?" "The old man is loose. Tyranids are coming. Chaos already tried to break in, and we're not in Kansas anymore." Cain set down the data slate. "Define not in Kansas. Different universe, different laws, same monsters." A faint smile touched Cain's stone lips. "And you want me to talk to him?" "He's heading for the Underhive. If he establishes territory there, we'll never contain him. He might listen to you. You're both old, both unique." Cain stood. He moved with a liquid grace that belied his stone flesh. "What do I get in return?" "What do you want?" "Access to your new world's historical archives. I want to understand where we've landed." "Done. Then I'll talk to him." Cain walked toward the door, then paused. "But you should know, he's not just expanding his territory. He's scared." Morrison blinked. "Scared? Of what?" Cain looked toward the ceiling, as if he could see through kilometers of rock and metal to the void beyond. "Something older than him is coming, and it's hungry." The facility trembled. It wasn't the deep, structural shudder of an earthquake or explosion. It was a high-frequency vibration that crept through the walls and deck plating, a buzzing sensation that set teeth on edge and made Auspex needles dance erratically. In the communications center, Tech Priest Zahn stared at his console, his organic eye wide with horror. "The vibration, it is not mechanical," he reported, his mechadendrites twitching in sync with the trembling. "It is biological in origin, a resonant frequency emitted by the approaching Hive fleet. They are singing to this world, and something within this facility is answering." On the main tactical display, the Tyranid fleet appeared as a swirling cloud of biosignatures at the system's edge. But one tendril, a vanguard of faster organisms, had broken away and was streaking toward Persephone Nath. Estimated arrival, 90 minutes. Captain Korev's voice crackled over the vox from the undying vigilance. "Inquisitor, I have visual confirmation on the lead organisms. They are not standard vanguard forms. They appear to be specialized. Larger sensory crests, enhanced neural ganglia. They are homing in on your location with unnatural precision." Inquisitor Vale stood beside Site Director Morrison in the central command hub, watching multiple feeds. One showed Cain moving through the facility's upper levels toward SCP-106's last known location. Another showed the iPods being escorted toward SCP-173's chamber, where a team of Foundation personnel, working in rotating shifts to maintain constant visual contact, were attempting to maneuver the statue back into its containment cell. A third feed displayed the exterior, where Imperial Guard units were frantically fortifying positions around the anomalous structure. "Your anomaly, Cain," Vale said. He said the old man was scared, that something older is coming. Did he mean the Tyranids? Morrison shook her head. Cain is over 5,000 years old by our records. The old man is likely older. If something frightens them, it's not just a hive fleet. She called up another data screen. The vibrations. They're resonating with certain anomalous materials in containment. SCP-409, the corrosive crystal, is growing at an accelerated rate. SCP-662, the butler's bell, has been ringing without being touched. And SCP is... She trailed off, her face going pale. "What?" Vale demanded. "That one is classified under a mimetic kill agent. Even speaking its designation risks cognitive contamination. But its containment cell is reporting activity. It's aware of the Hive fleet's approach." Before Vale could press further, an alarm shrieked. The feed tracking Cain dissolved into static. When it cleared, it showed the upper-level corridor empty, save for a single item lying on the deck. The featureless metal mask SCP-106 had crafted in SCP-914. Cain was gone. Cain had found the old man in a disused maintenance conduit near the facility's outer hull. SCP-106 was not moving. He stood perfectly still, his decayed face tilted upward, listening to the vibrations thrumming through the metal. The mask hovered nearby, as if standing guard. "You can feel it too, can't you?" Cain said, his stone flesh making no sound as he approached. SCP-106 did not turn. His voice, when it came, was a dry rustle like dead leaves. "They are coming, the Great Devourer. They sing of hunger, of an ending. You've faced endings before? Not like this." For the first time in Foundation records, SCP-106's voice held something other than predatory malice. It held unease. "They do not hunt. They do not toy. They consume. They make everything same. Even my home would become part of them. There would be no hunt, no chase, only digestion." "So run," Cain suggested. "Your pocket dimension is infinite. Hide there." The old man finally turned. His empty eye socket seemed to focus on Cain's stone face. They would find it. They are sniffing at the edges already. Their song, it finds cracks. They know I am here. They know what I am. And they are curious. Cain understood. To the hive mind, SCP-106 was an anomaly, a biological entity with impossible properties, a puzzle, a potential new adaptation to be absorbed, digested, understood, and replicated. The Tyranids weren't just coming for the biomass of Persephone the Earthine. They were coming for the anomalies themselves. "You made a mask," Cain noted, gesturing to the floating metal disc. "To better control your abilities?" "To remember," SCP-106 corrected. The machine refined the corruption from the metal, left only the pattern of its making. I can see the hands that shaped it, the prayers that stained it, the rage that fueled it. It helps me remember that this place has rules, that there are hunters here too, not just prey. Cain absorbed this. The old man was adapting, not just biologically, but conceptually. He was learning the rules of this new universe, and he was afraid. "The humans want to contain you again," Cain said. "They have acid. They have traps. They will chase you, hurt you, cage you." "Yes. Or," Cain continued, "you could help them. The humans are also hunters, and they are very good at killing things that threaten their territory. SCP-106 was silent for a long moment. The vibrations grew stronger. Somewhere, a rivet popped from a stressed bulkhead. "The small one," the old man said finally. "The happy one. It pushes away the fear. It makes the song quieter." SCP-999, Cain confirmed. "They will use it. They are planning to use many things." "Then I will watch," SCP-106 decided. "I will see if the humans are hunters worthy of this world. If they are, I will return to my cage. If they are not..." He looked toward the hull, as if seeing the approaching swarm beyond. "Then I will take my home and flee far from here, and leave this place to its digestion." He phased through the wall, leaving Cain alone with the mask. Cain picked it up. The metal was cold. On its inner surface, now visible, fine lines had appeared. A map, etched at a microscopic level, showing the facility's layout and highlighted in minute detail the structural weak points in the outer hull. The old man wasn't just scared, he was planning. In the command hub, the Tyranid vanguard entered the atmosphere. On the exterior feeds, they saw them. Winged creatures the size of Valkyries, with elongated sensory organs that pulsed with bioluminescence. They circled the Foundation site like carrion birds, shrieking a chorus that was picked up by external microphones and translated into a grinding, clicking mantra. Pattern, anomaly, consume, understand. Imperial anti-air batteries opened fire. Las cannons seared the sky. A winged creature exploded in a shower of chitin and ichor. 2 more were shredded by Hydra flak. But for everyone that fell, 2 more descended, their focus absolute. They were not attacking the defenses. They were studying them, mapping them. "Where are the ground forces?" Vale demanded. "Still in the upper atmosphere," Korev responded. "The Vanguard is purely recon, but they're learning, Inquisitor. Their adaptation rate is unprecedented." As if to prove his point, the next wave of winged creatures descended with hardened carapace sections angled specifically to deflect last fire. The Imperial gunners adjusted, aiming for joints and eyes. The creatures adapted again, developing redundant nerve clusters. "They're evolving in real time," Morrison whispered. "Just like 682. The connection was horrific. The Tyranid hive mind operated on a principle of rapid adaptation through consumption and replication. SCP-682 possessed near-instantaneous adaptive abilities on an individual level. They were, in a way, reflections of the same terrible principle. Perfect, relentless evolution. "Director," a technician called. "Containment cell for SCP-682 is reporting increased activity. The subject it's listening to the Tyranid signals. Its metabolic rate has increased by 300%. On the feed, SCP-682 floated in its acid bath, its multiple eyes wide open, its body trembling with what could only be described as anticipation. Its jaws moved, forming silent words that the lip-reading software translated. New things to kill, new things to break, new things to hate. It wants them to get in, Vance realized with dawning horror. It wants the Tyranids to breach containment so it can fight them. Then we must ensure that does not happen, Vale said. Brother Sergeant Matthias, take your squad to SCP-682's containment level. Reinforce the guards. If that creature gets loose during a Tyranid invasion. The Grey Knight nodded and departed. Morrison stared at the feeds, her mind racing. The Tyranids were adapting to Imperial weapons, but the Foundation had weapons that didn't follow conventional rules. Weapons that adapted themselves. Dr. Vance, she said quietly, authorize the use of SCP-1499. Vance stiffened. The gas mask? Director, its effects are completely unpredictable in this environment. The last test resulted in... I know what it resulted in, but it shifts the wearer into a parallel dimension populated by hostile entities. If we can lure the Tyranids into putting it on, or expose them to its effects, it could backfire catastrophically. So could everything else. Morrison turned to Vale. Inquisitor, I need your permission to deploy an experimental anomaly-based defense. Vale looked at the screens. The sky was now thick with Tyranid reconnaissance organisms. The vibrations were getting stronger. Somewhere in the lower hive, SCP-106 was watching. And in its cell, SCP-682 was smiling. Do it, Vale said. As the order was given, a new alert flashed. Not from the exterior, from deep within the facility. SCP-173 was on the move again. Somehow, despite continuous observation, it had gotten out of its containment chamber. The feed showed it standing at a three-way junction, motionless. Around it lay the bodies of 4 Foundation personnel, their necks twisted. But the 5th member of the team was alive. Backed against a wall, his eyes wide with terror, staring unblinkingly at the statue. He was alone, and on his biosign monitor, his heart rate was spiking into dangerous territory. He couldn't maintain the stare much longer. Nearest response team is 2 minutes away, a security officer reported, his voice tense. Send the iPods, Morrison ordered. They don't blink. The feed switched to show SCP-131-A and B bouncing eagerly down the corridor toward the junction. They rounded the corner, their single eyes fixed on SCP-173. The statue remained still. The trapped guard, seeing the iPods, finally allowed himself to blink and collapsed, hyperventilating. The iPods positioned themselves on either side of the corridor, their gazes locked on SCP-173. They chirped reassuringly at the guard. The plan was working. Then the lights went out. The facility-wide blackout lasted only. The first mycetic spore struck the barren plains 2 kilometers from the Foundation perimeter. It hit with the force of a lance strike, cratering the earth and vomiting forth a tide of chitin and claws. Termagants scrambled from the ruptured pod, their flesh guns already spitting biomunitions at the Imperial fortifications. Behind them, larger forms unfolded. A Hive Tyrant with Bonesword and whip, its psychic presence a cold pressure against the mind. Carnifexes bellowing challenges, warriors directing the swarm with synaptic precision. But they did not charge the human lines immediately. Instead, the swarm paused, the smaller organisms forming a perimeter as the larger creatures turned their sensory arrays toward the Foundation structure. The Hive Tyrant's head tilted, its crest patterns flashing with complex bioluminescent signals. It was studying. In the command hub, Morrison watched the feed, her analytical mind racing. They're prioritizing the anomalies. The biomass of a hive city is a feast, but we're presenting them with a puzzle. The hive mind wants to understand what we have before it consumes it. That gives us time, Vale said, but not much. Sergeant Grimm reports the perimeter will hold for perhaps an hour against that force. Less if they bring in heavier bioforms. Then we make that hour count. Morrison turned to her console. Deploy SCP-1499 to the eastern airlock. Have MTF Tau 5 ready to escort it outside under heavy guard. Tau 5? Vale questioned. Samsara, Morrison clarified, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face. Our resurrective task force. They'll retrieve the mask if things go wrong. As she gave orders, a separate alert flashed. from the cell of SCP-1. The memetically sealed designation glitched on the screen, but the message was clear. Containment integrity at 98%. Entity requesting communication. Morrison stared at the alert. No one communicated with that entity. Ever. The protocol was absolute. Maintain dimensional lock, suppress all emissions, and under no circumstances acknowledge its existence. "Ignore it," she said, her voice tight. "Director," Vance said carefully, "its containment is linked to the facility's primary power grid. If the Tyranids breach the outer defenses and damage the generators, then we lose containment on something that makes the Hive fleet look like a minor infestation. I am aware." Morrison took a steadying breath. "Focus on the immediate threat. Where is SCP-173? The feeds showed the statue had vanished from the internal sensor net. The last sighting placed it near sub-level 6, close to the main geothermal power taps. It was moving deeper, not toward the surface. And the old man? SCP-106 has reappeared in the upper hive, a technician reported. He's observing. He phased through a hab-block wall and is watching the Tyranid landing zone from inside a ruined chapel. He's not attacking, just watching. Cain? Returned to his cell. He says the conversation is concluded. He also left this. The technician held up the featureless metal mask. He said you'd need it. Morrison took the mask. It was lighter than it looked. The etched map on the interior was exquisitely detailed, showing not just structural weaknesses, but also power conduits, ventilation shafts, and, alarmingly, the hidden paths SCP-106 had used to move through the facility unseen. "He gave us a guide to his own movements," she murmured. "A show of good faith? Or a warning?" The ground shook as a second volley of mycetic spores impacted closer. The Imperial perimeter lit up with sustained blast fire and the throaty roar of heavy bolters. On the feed, they saw Carnifex charge an Earthshaker emplacement, absorbing hundreds of rounds before collapsing mere meters from the gun crew. As it died, its body burst, releasing a cloud of toxic spores that melted flesh and corroded metal. Standard Imperial tactics were insufficient. The adaptation rate was too fast. "Deploy SCP-1499 now," Morrison ordered. At the eastern airlock, a 4-person MTF team, designated Tau-5, clad in black armor of unknown composition, escorted a simple storage crate outside. They placed it 50 meters from the defensive line, opened it, and retreated. Inside lay a Soviet-era gas mask, aged and stained, labeled SCP-1499. For a moment, nothing happened. The Tyranid swarm continued its methodical advance, pausing only to test Imperial defenses with probing attacks. Then, a termagant, scuttling ahead of the main swarm, encountered the crate. Its rudimentary intelligence registered the object as non-threat, but its synaptic link to the hive mind hummed with curiosity. The mask was artificial, not biomass, a tool. The hive mind, ever seeking new adaptations, prompted the creature to investigate. The termagant nudged the mask with its claw. Then, following an impulse broadcast from the Hive Tyrant, it awkwardly picked up the mask with its mouth and attempted to don it. The moment the rubber seal touched the creature's chitin, reality stuttered. The termagant vanished, not in an explosion or a puff of smoke. It simply ceased to exist in this dimension. In its place, a hazy, shifting patch of air remained, through which could be glimpsed a gray, fog-choked landscape of broken industrial ruins. From within that haze, distant, guttural roars echoed. A synaptic shockwave rippled through the Tyranid swarm. Organisms stumbled, The Hive Tyrant shrieked, a sound of pure cognitive dissonance. An entire creature, along with its synaptic link, had been severed from the hive mind. Not killed, gone. To a collective consciousness that defined existence through connection, this was an existential terror. The patch of hazy air began to expand. "It's creating a stable dimensional aperture," Vance reported, monitoring from the command hub. "The mask is acting as a permanent bridge to 1499's dimension. The rift is widening." From the gray fog, shapes emerged. Tall, gaunt humanoids with elongated limbs and featureless faces, clad in tattered uniforms. They moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, advancing toward the Tyranid lines. Bioweapons fired at them. The projectiles passed through them as if they were mist. The entities, designated by the Foundation as the Silent Ones, reached the front line of termagants. Where they touched, the Tyranids didn't die. They too vanished, pulled into the gray dimension. The hive mind reacted with fury and fascination. Here was a new form of predation, a new rule to understand. The swarm's behavior shifted instantly. No longer interested in the Imperial lines, it turned its full attention on the expanding rift and the Silent Ones. Hormagaunts surged forward, not to attack, but to be taken, sacrificed to gather data on the phenomenon. A Carnifex charged, was enveloped by 3 Silent Ones, and disappeared. The Hive Tyrant observed, its psychic aura blazing as it processed the information. They're treating it like a new environmental hazard, Vale realized. They're trying to adapt to it. That's what we wanted, Morrison said. But her eyes were fixed on the rift's growth rate. But the aperture isn't closing. It's stabilizing. We've opened a door and we can't close it. The Silent Ones, having harvested a dozen Tyranids, began to advance beyond the rift's immediate border. They phased through Imperial barricades, ignoring the humans, and moved toward the Foundation walls. Their blank faces turned upward, as if sensing the concentration of anomalies within. "They're drawn to anomalous energy," Vance whispered. "We just led them to the biggest buffet of their lives." Morrison slammed her hand on the comms panel. "Tau 5, retrieve the mask and seal the crate, now." The black-armored team moved with impossible speed, darting through the chaotic battlefield. One of them snatched the gas mask from where it lay. The moment it was removed from the vicinity of the rift, the hazy patch flickered. The Silent Ones on this side turned, as one, toward the MTF operative holding their anchor to this world. Then the Hive Tyrant struck. A psychic blast, focused and devastating, hammered into the Tau 5 operative. His armor cracked. He fell. The mask skittered across the ground. A Hormagaunt pounced, grabbing the mask in its claws and, in a final synaptic command from the hive mind, shoved it onto its own face. The creature vanished. The rift pulsed, grew brighter, and doubled in size. More Silent Ones poured forth. They were no longer just taking Tyranids. They were taking everything. A Chimera transport was engulfed in gray mist and disappeared. A section of ferrocrete wall vanished. We had exchanged one unstoppable force for another. "Seal the eastern sector. Blast doors now," Morrison yelled. As the massive doors began to grind shut, a new problem erupted. Internally, from SCP-682's chamber, the creature was no longer waiting. It had heard the battle, smelled the new aliens, tasted their strange, collective hatred, and it had decided it would not be denied. The acid bath containment systems reported catastrophic failure, not from external damage, from within. 682's body chemistry had adapted, neutralizing the acid. Its regeneration now outpaced the corrosion. The blast doors to its cell groaned, then shrieked, then burst outward in a shower of molten metal and concrete. SCP-682 emerged. Larger than before, its hide a patchwork of scar tissue, crystalline growths, and newly formed metallic plating. It ignored the gray knights and Foundation guards firing upon it. It ignored everything but the path to the surface. It smashed through bulkheads, tore through decks, a juggernaut of hatred heading straight for the eastern breach, toward the Silent Ones and the Tyranids. All forces, let it pass, Vale commanded, understanding dawning. Do not engage SCP-682. Repeat, let it through. The abomination crashed through the final interior barrier and exploded into the war-torn landscape outside. It took in the scene, the Tyranid swarm, the strange gray rift, the phasing Silent Ones. It drew a breath that sounded like a collapsing starship hull, and it roared. The sound was a physical wave of pure, undiluted malice. It cracked the ground, shattered windows still intact in the distant hive spires. For a moment, all other noise ceased. The Hive Tyrant turned. SCP-682 charged. The two Titans met in a collision that sent shockwaves through the battlefield. Bonezord met Adaptive Hide. Whip tendrils sought purchase and found none. 682's jaws closed on the Hive Tyrant's limb, and bioacid that could melt tank armor dripped harmlessly from its teeth. The Silent Ones converged on both of them, their misty hands reaching. 682 shrugged them off, its very existence seemingly an affront to their dimensional nature. The Hive Tyrant was not so lucky. A Silent One touched its carapace, and a chunk of the creature simply vanished, severed cleanly. The battle dissolved into a three-way melee of impossible horrors. The Imperial and Foundation forces could only watch, holding their perimeter against the remnants of the swarm that were now leaderless and confused. Back in the command hub, Morrison watched the apocalyptic stalemate. It was a temporary solution. 682 would not stop. The Silent Ones would not stop. The Tyranids would keep coming. And deep in the facility, the alert from SCP flashed again, more urgently. Containment integrity at 94%. It was using the power fluctuations from the battle, from the activated rift, to weaken its prison. Morrison looked at the mask in her hands, the old man's mask, with its map of hidden paths. She looked at the feeds of the three-way war outside. She looked at Vale, whose face was set in grim determination. They were out of tools, out of tricks. "Inquisitor," Morrison said, her voice hollow. "I need to speak with your tech priest, and I need access to your ship's main reactor." "Why?" "Because we're going to build a bigger cage." She held up the mask. "And for that, I need to talk to the one anomaly that understands containment better than anyone. The one that's been asking to talk this whole time." She was going to communicate with SCP Quatnan, the entity that the Foundation had never, ever dared to speak to. The path to Sublevel 12, where SCP-Cain was contained, was unlike any other in the facility. The corridors leading to it were stripped bare, no markings, no signage, no color. The walls, floor, and ceiling were a uniform matte gray that seemed to swallow light and sound. Even the air felt dead here, sterile and still. Morrison walked with Inquisitor Vale, Tech Priest Zahn, and a single, heavily modified MTF guard whose helmet contained a mimetic kill agent scrubber. Dr. Vance had stayed in the command hub. 2 senior personnel could not risk exposure. The entity is designated only by its containment number, Morrison explained, her voice hushed in the oppressive quiet. Speaking its true name, or even its common Foundation nickname, can cause severe cognitive degradation. We refer to it as the architect. It is a consciousness that exists across multiple dimensions, fascinated by structure, order, and most of all, containment. It doesn't want to escape. It wants to study how things are kept in. A demon of order? Vale asked, her hand on her weapon. Worse, a scientist. It helped us design the containment procedures for 17 other Keter-class anomalies. Its insights are invaluable. Its price is always the same. It wants to study new containment methods. New cages. Morrison stopped before a featureless wall. This is the entrance. There is no door. It opens when it decides to listen. She placed the old man's mask against the wall. The metal glowed faintly, and the intricate etchings on its inner surface lit up like circuitry. The wall silently dissolved into a swirling, non-Euclidean pattern of angles that hurt to look at, revealing a chamber beyond. The room was a perfect sphere. In its center, suspended in a cage of shifting, crystalline light, was a shape. It was not a body. It was a concept given vague form, a tesseract of interlocking gears, mirrors, and umbilical cords that led into the walls, floor, and ceiling, and into realities beyond. It had no face, but they all felt its attention focus on them. Query: source of new pattern. The voice was not sound. It was information injected directly into their neural pathways. Tech Priest Zahn gasped, his mechadendrites going rigid as his brain attempted to process the data stream. Morrison held up the mask. Anomalous entity SCP-106, the Old Man, used anomalous machine SCP-91 to refine this from warp-tainted material. It's a focusing tool and a map. Analysis. Pattern refined from chaotic, corruptive source. Purposeful restructuring. Interesting. Entity 106 seeks efficiency, seeks to understand new rules. The rules are changing, Morrison said, forcing calm into her mental projection. There is a hive fleet of Tyranids outside. A dimensional rift to SCP-1499's realm is open. SCP-682 is loose and fighting both. The structural integrity of this facility, and by extension your containment, is at risk. Acknowledged. Vibrational analysis indicates system-wide stress. Containment of multiple entities will fail within 2.3 hours at current degradation rate. Outcome: cascading breach. Total collapse of local reality structure. The architect's assessment was cold, clinical, and terrifying. We need a new solution, Morrison pressed. A way to contain the external threats, recontain the breached entities, and stabilize this location permanently. Proposal: you seek a meta-containment solution, a structure to hold multiple containment solutions, a prison for prisons. Yes. Query: resources available? Vale stepped forward, her psychic wards flaring as she pushed her will into the mental dialogue. The Imperial Navy cruiser in orbit has a Class Need plasma reactor. The Mechanicus has arcane field generator technology. The Foundation has your expertise. Additional resource: Tyranid hive mind. Biological neural network of extreme adaptability and unity. Ideal for pattern recognition and systemic maintenance. A chilling silence fell. You want to use the hive mind as a component? Zahn whispered, horrified and fascinated. Correction: a subsystem. The hive mind seeks to incorporate all biology. This facility seeks to contain all anomalies. Goals are not incompatible, merely misaligned. Realignment is possible. Images flooded their minds. A vast biomechanical structure growing from the Foundation site. incorporating Tyranid bioships as structural components, using the hive mind's processing power to monitor and maintain thousands of individual containment cells. The silent ones from SCP-1499's dimension could be used as interdimensional wardens, patrolling the borders between realities. SCP-682's limitless hatred and adaptability could be channeled as a security system, an immune response against internal breaches. It was a vision of a perfect, eternal, self-sustaining prison, a Pandora's vault for the 41st millennium. The cost? Vale demanded. Cost, the sacrifice of this world's biomass, the incorporation of all Tyranid forces in the system, the willing submission of the Foundation's anomalous knowledge to the new structure, and an anchor. What anchor? A consciousness must be fused to the core to direct the system, a mind that understands containment, sacrifice, and eternity. You have one suitable. Morrison knew. They all knew. Cain, she breathed. SCP-073, marked by Brother's betrayal, cursed with immortality and the burden of memory. He seeks purpose. He understands cages intimately. He will accept. And if we refuse this proposal? Vale asked. Then containment fails. SCP will be released, followed by all others. The Tyranids will consume the anomalies, incorporating their properties into the Hive fleet. Result, a galactic threat of unprecedented nature. Chaos gods will claim portions. Reality will unravel. This is not a threat. It is a projection with 99.7% probability. The architect was not bargaining. It was presenting the only viable equation. Outside, the three-way battle raged. 682 had lost an entire side of its body to the Silent Ones, regrowing it in moments with chitinous armor copied from the Tyranids. The Hive Tyrant was a shattered ruin, but the swarm fought on, now directed by a diffuse synaptic web. The rift pulsed, vomiting forth more gray fog and faceless wardens. "We don't have a choice, do we?" Morrison said, not as a question. Vale's face was a mask of conflict. This was heresy on an unimaginable scale. To collaborate with Xenos, to use warp-tainted artifacts, to build a kingdom of cages. But the alternative was the end of everything. "The Emperor's will is mankind's survival," she said finally, each word costing her. "Sometimes survival requires walking paths that smell of damnation. Do it." The process was not a ritual. It was a surgical, multidimensional operation guided by the architect. On the surface, SCP-919 was deployed. The small, orange entity radiated waves of pure empathetic joy directly into the fray. The effect on the Tyranids was catastrophic. The hive mind, a consciousness of pure hunger and cold logic, had no defense against unconditional, meaningless happiness. Synaptic links frayed. Organisms stumbled, confused. The collective will wavered. In that moment of vulnerability, Tech Priest Zahn and Foundation engineers, following the architect's schematics, used the mask as a focusing array. They channeled the raw plasma output of the Undying Vigilance's reactor, beamed down from orbit, into the heart of the dissipating swarm. The energy did not destroy. It reprogrammed. It used the hive mind's own assimilation mechanisms against it, flooding the synaptic network with a new primary directive. Contain, preserve, maintain. Tyranid organisms stopped fighting. They began to build. They broke down their own mycetic spores, their fallen bioforms, and the surrounding landscape, weaving a gargantuan, breathing structure around the Foundation site. A living citadel of bone, chitin, and bioplasma. The Silent Ones, sensing a new, stable structure of immense, anomalous energy, ceased their random harvesting. They anchored themselves to the growing citadel's outer shell, becoming sentinel figures in the gray mist, their forms shifting to match the new architecture. They had found a permanent home. SCP-682, now the only thing left fighting, roared in frustration as its enemies vanished into a new, ordered system. It turned its hatred on the growing walls, smashing and biting. In response, the restructured hive mind, now acting as the Citadel's immune system, directed a concentrated swarm of bio-Titan-grade organisms to engage it. Not to kill, to herd, to drive it back toward its original containment chamber, which was now being reinforced with living Tyranid bioarmor and patrolled by silent ones. It was a cage it could not break, because the cage would evolve faster than it could. Deep below, Cain stood before the architect's chamber. He understood his role. He had read the proposal in Morrison's eyes. He nodded once, a gesture of weary acceptance. "I have lived long enough," he said. "Let my eternity be of use." He walked into the swirling light. His stone flesh fused with the core of the newborn Citadel's consciousness. He became the warden, the director, the living memory of the prison. His curse of immortality became its guarantee of permanence. The transformation took hours. When it was done, the battlefield was gone. In its place stood the Anomalous Containment Citadel, a towering Gothic biological structure that pulsed with a soft, synchronized light. Tyranid bioships circled it like guard dogs. Silent ones stood vigil at its gates. Inside, every Foundation anomaly was secured in cells more perfect and impregnable than before, their energies harnessed to power the Citadel's defenses. On the command deck of the Undying Vigilance, now permanently stationed in orbit as the Citadel's watchtower, Inquisitor Vale and Site Director Morrison looked down at what they had wrought. "We have saved this sector," Vale said quietly, "and possibly the galaxy, by creating its greatest nightmare." "We've contained the threats," Morrison corrected, though her voice lacked conviction. "That was always the mission." "At what cost?" "We have made a pact with things we cannot understand. We have given a hive mind purpose. We have built a kingdom where the monsters are the bricks and mortar." "And the warden is a man who murdered his brother," Morrison finished. She looked at the planet below. The hive cities of Persephone-Thustund were untouched. The Tyranid fleet was gone, absorbed. The war was over. But in a chamber at the heart of the Citadel, the architect hummed with satisfaction. Containment optimal. New paradigm established. Continuing observation. It had its new cage to study. And an entire, brutal universe full of new anomalies to catalog. The mission of the SCP Foundation had not ended. It had just found a new, much larger scale on which to operate. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And now, there is also a perfect, eternal prison. The arrival of the SCP Foundation did not bring salvation to the 41st millennium, nor did it bring mere destruction. It introduced a third, terrifying principle to a universe trapped between the tyranny of order and the madness of chaos: containment. The Anomalous Containment Citadel stands as a monument to pragmatic horror. It is not good, it is not evil, it is functional. The Tyranid hive mind, repurposed into a vast biological maintenance network, ensures the prison's structural integrity. The silent ones, bound from their gray dimension, patrol its liminal spaces. Cain, the eternal sinner, presides over it all with stone-faced resignation. And at its core, the architect continues its endless study of cages within cages. The Imperium of Man officially records Persephone-Thustund as the site of a miraculous victory, a Tyranid fleet vanquished by the Emperor's divine will. Inquisitor Vale's sealed report tells a different truth, buried deep in the Ordo Malleus's most restricted archives. The Foundation personnel, what remains of them, have been absorbed into a new hybrid organization, the Securitas, Containmente, et Protectio of the Imperium Tyrannus. Their methods are heresy, but their results are useful. SCP-682 still rages in its cell, its hatred undimmed, now serving as the Citadel's ultimate test subject and internal defense. SCP-1 has returned to his pocket dimension, satisfied with the new stable hunting grounds provided at the Citadel's lower levels. SCP-173 stands motionless in a gallery, watched by unblinking servo skulls and the ever-present iPods. But the universe is vast, and the warp is infinite. The Chaos Gods have taken note of this new, ordered blight on reality. Tzeentch is fascinated. Khorne is infuriated. Nurgle is curiously approving of such a resilient system. And the Emperor, upon his golden throne, his thoughts are unknown. The Foundation's motto endures, etched now in high Gothic on the Citadel's outer shell: secure, contain, protect. The galaxy is full of things that need to be secured. The warp is an ocean of things that must be contained. And humanity, frail and fleeting, must be protected. Even from itself, even from the tools it builds to protect itself. In the end, the SCP Foundation did not invade Warhammer 40k. It simply found a universe that was, itself, one massive, uncontained anomaly. And it began its work.